After Zhou Mian was brought back to Obsidian Town, she was not immediately sent into the ordinary name settling area. Bai Ji arranged for her to stay in a low stimulation room beside the silent name area. She had not fainted. She had not lost her voice. But it was as if her whole body had been washed through by an invisible flood. Her expression was so exhausted that it was nearly blank. Ajin sat outside the door and did not go in to ask her anything. He only placed the 3 wooden tablets where she could see them. You wanting to save your sister is not wrong. The correction thread is not your responsibility. Stop first. Zhou Mian looked at the 3 wooden tablets, and tears fell from time to time. But every time she finished crying, her breathing steadied a little more. Lin Yao synchronized the assistant's qualification page fragments sealed at the relay shed back to reality. After Qin Wan received it, she immediately began investigating. Zhou Mian's younger sister did indeed exist in reality. Her medical data also did indeed belong to an assistance program. But the problem was that this assistance program originally had nothing to do with divine domain error correction. At least, not on the surface. Halfway through her investigation, Qin Wan's face became extremely ugly. The outsourced review system for the assistance program was connected to a third-party qualification assessment module. Lin Yao asked, who connected it? A company called Anxu Data. Anxu Media. Anxu Data. The company that had rented the livestream warehouse had also been Anxu Media. Luo Wence's real-world line was not only on the media side. It was also on the data review side. Qin Wan continued, Anxu Data's module claims it can assess assistance priority for high-risk families. But in the back end, it added a hidden field. Synchronization stability status. Lin Yao's eyes darkened. In other words, someone connected divine domain synchronization status to medical assistance qualification? Qin Wan's voice turned cold. Yes. At the moment, we don't know how many people it has affected. When Chen Shu heard this, he slammed the table directly. This is no longer Luo Wentz creating contamination at a single point. This is connecting correction logic to real-world welfare and assistance systems. He Chuan was still at the second research group headquarters. After hearing the news, he was silent for a long time as well. I will investigate Anxu Data. Chen Shu said coldly, not you. We investigate it together. This time, He Chuan did not argue. Lin Yao looked at the data coming in from the reality side, and for the first time he felt a deeper kind of chill. The abandoned mall had gathered people together. The livestream warehouse had sent correction language outward. The short videos had fragmented contamination. Anxu Data, however, had connected correction logic to real-world qualification systems. That was more terrifying than all the previous incidents. Because qualification systems already determined many parts of people's lives. Medical assistance. Insurance claims. Game testing eligibility. Subsidy slots. Employment review. Loan assessment. If synchronization stability status became part of these qualifications, then many people would be forced to choose correction. Not because they believed in correction, but because if they did not correct, they might lose the support that kept their real lives standing. What Luo Wentz was building was not only a military order. It was a lock of qualification. Lin Yao wrote those 4 words on the whiteboard. Qualification lock. The definition formed quickly. Using qualifications related to medical care, subsidies, benefits, accounts, insurance, work, student status, loans, and other rights to force individuals to accept correction, return to formation, confirm synchronization, or give up withdrawal. Feature appears voluntary, but is in fact qualification coercion. Response: separate qualification from correction, suspend automatic invalidation, and traced the source of qualification judgments. A system prompt appeared. New real-world contamination category added, Qualification Lock. Reality adaptation of the withdrawal contract register improved. Warning: once Qualification Lock is connected to real-world systems on a large scale, the Obsidian safety point will not be able to bear it alone. The warning was heavy. The Obsidian safety point could save one person. It could save dozens. But if an entire qualification system began using correction as a condition, that was not something the safety point could solve by itself. That required a system-level counterattack. Chen Shu quickly made a decision. We need to investigate Anxu Data. Xinhuan said, on the surface, we can investigate the outsourcing contracts. But if it has connected to many institutions, the scope will be very broad. He Chuan said, the second research group headquarters may have cooperation records involving Anxu Data. Lin Yao asked, will headquarters provide them? He Chuan was silent for a moment. Not necessarily. Meng Hong might cooperate with sealing the database. But if Anxu Data involved multiple external projects, then this would not be only a data security problem. It might involve cooperative interests, research funding, policy pilots, medical outsourcing, and even higher-level authorization. Chen Shu said, I will use Safety Incident Investigation Authority. I will treat the abandoned mall, livestream warehouse, short video contamination, and Zhou Mian's case as a continuous incident and apply to investigate Anxu-related companies. Xinhuan nodded. I'll organize the incident chain. Lin Yao looked at Zhou Mian's echo page. She had been saved this time, but the issue with her sister's assistance had not been resolved. If it was not investigated clearly, Zhou Mian's echo would be pulled again and again. That was the most vicious part of a qualification lock. It was not one-time contamination. It was long-term threat. Every qualification update, every review, every bill, every notice could tighten around a person again. Lin Yao said, the safety point needs to add qualification assistance. Xinhuan froze slightly. We are not a legal or social welfare unit. So we do not handle qualifications directly, Lin Yao said. We identify qualification coercion. When someone says, if I don't correct, I will lose a certain qualification, name-settling personnel must know this is not ordinary anxiety. It must be listed as a responsibility line. Chen Shu nodded. Feasible. Yi Jiwei added, the preliminary screening form also needs a new field. Have you been told that failing to complete correction will affect medical care, subsidies, accounts, work, student status, or other rights and benefits? Xinhuan immediately added it into the form. When Xiao Zhou saw it, he said softly, a lot of people will check this. Lin Yao looked at him. Xiao Zhou said, because everyone is afraid of losing qualifications. Not only in divine domain. He said it very quietly. But everyone understood. Reality itself was made of countless qualifications. Student status. Work eligibility. Insurance eligibility. Game eligibility. Medical eligibility. Loan eligibility. Subsidy eligibility. Luo Wentz had simply connected correction to them. If they did not dismantle it, many people would believe they were truly acting voluntarily. That evening, preliminary information on Anxu Data was found. The company had been founded less than a year ago. On the surface, its business was data cleaning, risk assessment, user behavior stratification, and AI customer service process optimization. Its partners included several medical assistance platforms, game outsourced customer service providers, live streaming media companies, and player community operation teams. Most importantly, it had once accepted an outsourced data annotation pre-processing project from the second research group. Zhou Qinan's resignation records also showed that he had briefly worked at Anxu Data. Han Xiu's livestream case had been subcontracted through Anxu Media. The line connected. Anxu was not a single company. It was a group of real-world outsourcing nodes. It connected research data, correction rhetoric, media live streams, medical assistance, player notifications, and qualification assessment. Luo Wence's real-world military order network had very likely been built through Anxu's outsourcing network. Lin Yao looked at the relationship diagram. The center was not Luo Wence himself. It was a name. The Anxu system. Qinwan said, if we want to dismantle Anxu, we need evidence. Chen Shu said, Zhou Mian's case is not enough. The short video audio leak can point to the second research group. The livestream warehouse can point to Anxu Media. But to prove that Anxu Data bound qualification and correction together, we need more internal data. Lin Yao looked at Anxu Data's address on the reality side screen. It was a commercial office building. Not an abandoned mall. Not a livestream warehouse. Not a basement. It was in the city center. Legally registered. Operating normally. It had employees. Contracts. Lawyers. This was much harder than fighting black-tide monsters. Because it wore legal clothing. Lin Yao said, then we start with people. Qinwan asked, who? Lin Yao looked at the relationship diagram. Zhou Qinan has been captured. Han Xiu has been captured as well. They were outer intermediaries. There must be someone inside Anxu who knows how the data is truly connected. Find someone who has not yet been fully swallowed by correction. Yi Jiwei suddenly said, I know one. Everyone looked at her. Yi Jiwei took a deep breath. In a previous data annotation project, I worked with someone from Anxu. Her name is Gu Mingxia. She handled annotation rule review. She was not a technical director. Once, she privately asked me why some correction language did not look like soothing, but like forcing people to consent. Lin Yao immediately asked, can you still contact her? Yi Jiwei opened her contacts. I don't know. She dialed the number. It rang for a long time. No one answered. The second time, no one answered either. The third time, the call connected. No one spoke on the other end. Yi Jiwei said softly, Gu Mingxia. It's me, Yi Jiwei. The other side remained silent for a long time. Then a very low female voice came through. Do not call me. Yi Jiwei was about to say something else, but the other person suddenly spoke hurriedly. They're clearing data. The qualification module is being transferred tonight. Do not trust Anxu's whitelist. There are dead people on the whitelist. The call cut off. The clubhouse fell into dead silence. There are dead people on the whitelist. That sentence sent a chill through everyone. Anxu's qualification module might not only be binding correction. It might even be using dead people's data to maintain a legal whitelist. Chen Shu immediately stood. Prepare for action. Lin Yao also looked toward the metal box. Tonight, they could not wait any longer. If Anxu Data's qualification module transferred, the qualification lock would spread into even more places. The next battle of the third season was not about rescuing one person. It was about dismantling the core of a real-world outsourcing system. Anxu Data's office was on the 26th floor of a commercial office building downtown. The glass exterior reflected the night. Downstairs, there were convenience stores, coffee shops, and shared office spaces. Unlike the abandoned mall, the livestream warehouse, or the old industrial district, everything here was too normal. So normal that it was hard to connect it with correction military orders, qualification lock, or a whitelist of the dead. But Lin Yao already knew that the most dangerous things in reality often did not look like monsters. They might be a notice, a form, a relaxation audio clip, a qualification assessment field, a seemingly reasonable outsourcing contract. When Chen Shu arrived with the team, many companies in the Anxu building were still working overtime. He did not kick the door open. This was not a black-tied nest. Nor was it a site where a military order point had already been activated. This was a legal commercial office. One wrong step, and Anxu could bite back at the third field team for illegal intrusion. So Chen Shu first presented a safety incident investigation order. At first, the building security guards still wanted to call to confirm. Chen Shu said only one sentence. If you notify the 26th floor now, you will bear named responsibility for the consequences of any data transfer. The guard's face instantly went pale. He did not know what a divine domain synchronization incident was, but he understood bear named responsibility. The access gate opened quickly. Lin Yao, Qinwan, Chen Shu, two field operatives, Yi Jiwei, and Song Ji went upstairs together. He Chuan did not come. He was still sealing the database at the second research group headquarters. But he kept remote communication open, ready to provide comparisons between Anxu and the research group's outsourced data at any time. As the elevator rose, Qinwan projected Gu Mingxia's file onto her tablet. Gu Mingxia, 29 years old. Rule Review Specialist at Anxu Data. Previously participated in review for the Medical Assistance Qualification Module, High-Risk Player Customer Service Rhetoric, and Correction Notification Text Grading. Not a core technician. But she had touched many rule boundaries. The fact that she could notice that correction language did not look like soothing, but like forcing people to consent, meant she had at least not been fully swallowed by Anxu's logic. Chen Shu asked, "Where is she now?" Qinwan said, her phone's last location was the Anxu building. The signal disappeared 15 minutes ago. Songji held the gray stone and said softly, "She is still here." Lin Yao looked at him. Songji closed his eyes. But the lines are chaotic. It's like someone put her into a pile of names. Lin Yao's eyes darkened. A pile of names. A whitelist. They reached the 26th floor. The elevator doors opened, revealing a clean, bright reception area. Anxu Data's logo hung on the wall. The slogan read, "Make every decision safer." Lin Yao looked at the line and felt only irony. No one was at the front desk. But the office area was lit. Rows of workstations were arranged neatly, and most screens were locked. Farther away, the glass door of a meeting room was half closed, and low voices came from inside. Chen Shu gestured. The field operatives approached from two directions. There were 3 people inside the meeting room. A middle-aged man in a suit was speaking into a laptop. 2 younger employees sat beside him, both looking nervous. When the middle-aged man saw Chen Shu enter, he did not panic. He closed the laptop and revealed a polite smile. "And you are?" Chen Shu showed his credentials. Third Field Team. Anxu Data is involved in a real-world synchronization contamination incident. We are investigating according to law. The middle-aged man frowned. We are a data service company. Are you sure you have the right place? Qinwan had already identified him. Lu Bingchang, Operations Director of Anxu Data. Lu Bingchang looked at her. Since you know who I am, you should know we have legal contracts and data processing authorization. Chen Shu said, then we will investigate the authorization first. Lu Bingcheng smiled. Of course. But our legal department needs to be present. That is fine. Chen Shu looked at the time. Before legal arrives, all data transfer stops. The smile on Lu Bingqing's face faded a little. I'm afraid that won't work. Some of this data involves service continuity obligations. Lin Yao suddenly spoke. Where is the qualification module being transferred tonight? Lu Bingqing's eyes changed slightly. Very slightly. But Lin Yao caught it. I don't know what you're talking about. Qinwan placed the summary of Gu Mingxia's call on the table. Gu Mingxia said you are clearing data. The qualification module is being transferred tonight. There are dead people on the whitelist. Lu Bingqing's face turned completely cold. Gu Mingxia is suspected of stealing company data. We are handling it internally. Chen Shu's eyes chilled. Where is she? She has already left the company. Songji suddenly said softly, no. Everyone looked at him. Songji pointed toward the depths of the office area. She's over there. Lu Bingqing's expression changed. Chen Shu immediately ordered, search. The two field operatives rushed into the deeper office area. Lu Bingqing rose as if to stop them, but Chen Shu pressed him back into the chair with one hand. Sit. The field operatives soon found Gu Mingxia inside a small data review room. She was not tied up. But she sat in a chair, a screen open in front of her, both hands resting on the keyboard as if she had just been working. Her face was pale, and her eyes were unfocused. On the screen was a whitelist review page. Large numbers of names and identity fields were listed there. Every line had a status beside it. Synchronization stable. Correction complete. Assistance priority. Risk exemption. Gu Mingxia kept repeating under her breath. Whitelist valid. Death does not affect qualification. Correction status inherited. Whitelist valid. As soon as Qinwan heard it, her face changed. She has been locked by commands. Lin Yao walked beside her but did not touch her. First, he looked at the screen. Several names on the whitelist had identity statuses that were very wrong. Death dates existed. But the system still displayed. Synchronization stable. Correction complete. May serve as qualification benchmark. Dead people were still on the whitelist. And they were labeled synchronization stable. Lin Yao immediately understood. Anxu Data was using people who were already dead, who could no longer object, and whose data remained complete as stable correction samples. These dead person whitelist entries might be used to calibrate the qualification module. They might also be used to cover up anomalies in living people under correction. More terrifying was correction status inherited. That meant some living people's qualifications might be bound to the correction status of the dead. The dead became the benchmark. The living were forced to align. Chen Shu looked at the screen, his voice very cold. Seal it. Yi Jiwei immediately took a non-invasive snapshot. Gu Mingxia was still reciting. Whitelist valid, death does not affect qualification. Lin Yao took out a sheet of paper and wrote. You can stop. Gu Mingxia did not react. He wrote again. You are not the whitelist. Gu Mingxia's fingers trembled. Lin Yao wrote the third sentence. The dead cannot consent for the living. Gu Mingxia drew in a sharp breath. Focus began returning to her eyes. She looked at Lin Yao, her voice hoarse. They told me to clear the death records. I refused. Then the system made me keep reviewing. Reviewing and reviewing. She looked at the screen, her whole body trembling. Many people on the whitelist are dead. But they are still opening qualifications for the living. Some living people, if they don't correct, are judged by the system to be less stable than the dead. That sentence silenced everyone. Less stable than the dead. This was the core logic of the qualification lock. The dead did not resist. The dead did not withdraw. The dead did not question. The data of the dead was fixed. So inside Anxu's model, the dead had become the most stable whitelist benchmark. As soon as a living person hesitated, withdrew, or refused correction, the system judged them as unstable. Lin Yao looked at Lu Bingcheng. Lu Bingcheng finally stopped smiling. But he still tried to defend himself. That is only historical data abnormality. Chen Shu said coldly, "You had better shut up." Lu Bingcheng said, "You don't understand qualification models. Death data doesn't mean the dead are really authorizing anything. It is only a stable sample." Lin Yao looked at him. "You just admitted it yourself." Lu Bingcheng's expression changed. Xinhuan had already recorded that sentence. Lin Yao walked to the whitelist screen. He did not touch the keyboard directly. Instead, he let Yi Jiwei seal the data first. Then he took out the responsibility register. Anxu Whitelist uses deceased individuals as synchronization stability benchmarks. Suspected use of correction complete status as a positive factor in qualification assessment. Suspected penalty against withdrawers, uncorrected persons, and temporary name holders by marking them unstable. Suspected alignment of living people's qualifications with stable samples from the dead. The responsibility register lit up. The whitelist on the screen began to flicker. Some hidden fields surfaced. Death status masking, enabled. Correction stability weight, high. Withdrawal record penalty, medium high. Temporary name record penalty, medium. Relative substitute confirmation, acceptable. Every line was iron evidence. Xinhuan gritted her teeth. Temporary names are penalized too. Yi Jiwei's face went pale. Withdrawal records lower qualification too. Chen Shu looked at Lu Bingcheng. Still historical data abnormality? Lu Bingcheng said nothing. Just then, the Anxu system suddenly displayed a warning. Qualification module transfer countdown, 3 o'clock. If local endpoint is controlled, automatic synchronization to backup node will begin. Lin Yao's eyes sank. As expected, Anxu had long prepared a transfer. If they could not stop it within 3 minutes, the whitelist and qualification lock module would be sent to an unknown backup node. Lu Bingcheng laughed softly. Sealing this place is useless. Service cannot be interrupted. Chen Shu slammed his fist onto the table. Yi Jiwei. Yi Jiwei had already rushed to the main console. I need permissions. Gu Mingxia raised her trembling hand. I have review permissions. Xinhuan asked, are they enough? Gu Mingxia shook her head. Not enough to stop the transfer. But I can mark whitelist abnormalities. Lin Yao immediately asked, what happens after marking? The system enters manual review. Will the transfer pause? If the abnormality ratio exceeds 30%, yes. How many dead people were on the whitelist? No one knew. But if Gu Mingxia said there were many, then it was worth trying. Lin Yao ordered, mark them. Gu Mingxia sat back before the keyboard, her fingers still trembling. Lin Yao placed the wooden tablets beside her. You can stop. The dead cannot consent for the living. Marking them is not your fault. Gu Mingxia took a deep breath and began to operate. She did not delete data. She did not alter data. She did only one thing. She marked masked death status. 1 line. 10 lines. 100 lines. System warnings flashed frantically. Abnormality ratio, 12%. 18%. 24%. Lu Bingqing finally panicked. Stop. Do you know how many partner systems this will bring to a halt? Gu Mingxia cried as she said, even then, we can't let the dead consent for the living. Abnormality ratio, 31%. A red prompt appeared. Whitelist abnormality ratio exceeds limit. Qualification module transfer paused. Entering manual review. The countdown stopped. Everyone exhaled at the same time. Anxu's qualification module had been caught. But this was only a pause. Not destruction. Chen Shu immediately ordered, seal the whitelist. Take Lu Bingcheng under control. Protect Gu Mingxia. The field operatives acted at once. Lu Bingcheng did not resist. He only looked coldly at Lin Yao. You think you saved people? You only stopped many people's assistance reviews. Starting tomorrow, they will curse you. Lin Yao looked at him. Then we will explain the reason clearly. You were the ones who put dead people into the whitelist. You were the ones who turned withdrawal and temporary names into penalties. You were the ones who made the qualification lock take effect. The responsibility for the halt does not lie with those who dismantled the lock. Lu Bingqing's face turned livid. The responsibility register lit again. Anxu qualification lock core paused. Whitelist death masking exposed. Gu Mingxia's remedial testimony established. Warning, backup node unknown. The Anxu system has not collapsed. Lin Yao looked at the last line. Backup node unknown. In other words, Luo Wentz might still have other qualification lock modules. But tonight, they had at least prevented this whitelist from transferring. More importantly, they had obtained evidence strong enough to pry open the Anxu system. Dead person whitelist. Withdrawal penalty. Temporary name penalty. Relative substitute confirmation. Each one of these could make Anxu Data unable to hide inside the skin of legal outsourcing any longer. After the dead person whitelist was sealed, the Anxu building did not immediately return to calm. On the contrary, it became like a hive whose lid had been ripped open. All kinds of calls began coming in. Partners. Legal teams. Outsourcing platforms. Medical assistance windows. There were even several unknown numbers repeatedly demanding that Anxu immediately restore qualification module service. Chen Shu had the field operatives record the sources of the calls one by one. Qinhuan began to perform de-identified statistics on the samples from the whitelist where death status masking had been confirmed. The result was worse than expected. Among the first sample of 1,000 people, 314 had death status masking. Among them, 127 were marked correction complete. 86 were used as assistance priority benchmarks. 41 were used as synchronization stable white samples. Yi Jiwei looked at the statistics, and her fingers went cold. White samples. This was a common term in model training. Positive samples. Stable samples. Standard samples. But when that term corresponded to the dead, it became an indescribable absurdity. The dead would not withdraw. The dead would not lose their voices. The dead would not complain. The dead would not refuse correction. So the dead were judged stable. The living, because they were afraid, because they hesitated, because they withdrew, because they wanted temporary names, were instead treated by the model as unstable. Lin Yao looked at the statistics, and all of Obsidian's rosters across the journey rose in his mind. The starving dead steal. The nameless record. The soul-pacifying inscription. The battle soul altar. Obsidian's logic was, the dead must also have names, but they cannot carry consent for the living. Anxu's logic was, the dead are most stable and can become qualification benchmarks for the living. These were two completely opposite roads. He wrote into the responsibility register. The dead may be named, but they may not authorize. The dead may be remembered, but they may not serve as consent samples. The stability of the dead does not mean the living should be forced into stability. After those 3 sentences were written, the metal box vibrated slightly. Far away in Obsidian Town, the Battle Soul altar also sent a faint response. The soul-pacifying inscriptions seemed to be touched. Names such as Sun Arif, Lin Yao, Pei Shen, and Xiao Zhuan glowed faintly beside the altar. They were all dead. But Obsidian had never used them to consent for the living. That was the fundamental difference between the Battle Soul altar and Anxu's Whitelist. Xinhuan noticed the shift in Lin Yao's expression. What happened? Lin Yao said, Anxu's dead person Whitelist stimulates the Battle Soul altar. Xinhuan froze. Because both involved deceased data? No, Lin Yao said. Because it abuses the position of the dead. That sentence made Xinhuan fall silent. She slowly nodded. I understand. Obsidian gives the dead a place. Anxu turns the dead into tools. Yes. Gu Mingxia sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket given to her by the field operatives. Her face was still pale. After she heard that sentence, she suddenly said softly, At first, I only felt the data was strange. But my supervisor said death samples are stable closed loops. They will no longer change. They are suitable as benchmarks. She raised her head and looked at Lin Yao. At the time, I felt uncomfortable. But they said it was only data. Not people. Lin Yao asked, When did you begin to suspect something? Gu Mingxia tightened her grip on the blanket. Once, I saw that a family member of one death sample was also applying for assistance. That family member had not completed synchronization correction, so the system judged them unstable. But the relative who had died was treated by the system as a stable sample, indirectly lowering that person's priority. I thought that was wrong. I went to ask Director Liu. He said the model does not look at ethics. It only looks at results. Chen Shu said coldly, So you contacted Yi Jiwei? Gu Mingxia nodded. I wanted to know whether correction language was really a safety procedure. But afterward, I was transferred away from that project. Today, when they were going to transfer the qualification module, I learned that the whitelist was going to be cleaned. Not clearing the dead. Clearing the death markers. Yi Jiwei whispered, turning the dead into living data that is forever stable. Gu Mingxia closed her eyes. Yes. Lin Yao added to the whiteboard. Death marker masking. Harm causes deceased individuals to be treated by the model as still possessing consent, stability, and qualification reference value. Response: death status must not be masked in the core layer of qualification review. He Chuan sent a message from the second research group headquarters. Cooperation records between Anxu Data and headquarters found. Project name: Qualification Stratification Pilot for High Synchronization Anxiety Groups. Responsible contact is not Luo Wentz. Lin Yao frowned as he looked at the message. Not Luo Wentz. That meant Anxu was not only a private line Luo Wentz had set up. It had originally cooperated with the second research group headquarters. Luo Wentz had only used, modified, and contaminated that cooperation line. That made responsibility more complicated. Chen Shu asked, Who is the responsible contact? He Chuan waited several seconds before replying. Below deputy director level. Project manager, Feng Liheng. When Yi Jiwei heard the name, her expression changed. Feng Liheng is from the correction process group. Xinhuan asked, What kind of person is he? Yi Jiwei said, he has always advocated that correction processes should be standardized, scaled, and automated. If he was the one connecting with Anxu, then it makes sense. Lin Yao asked, does he have anything to do with Luo Wince? Yi Jiwei shook her head. I don't know. But he may not need to have anything to do with Luo Wince. He already believes the correction process is necessary. That sentence silenced everyone. In reality, many dangers did not require conspiracy. They only required groups of people each doing something they believed was reasonable. The research group wanted standardization. Anxu wanted commercialization. Outsourcing companies wanted efficiency. Medical assistance platforms wanted automation. Luo Wince only needed to connect these lines together, and correction military orders could begin operating like a system. Lin Yao said quietly, so Qualification Lock is not only Luo Wince. Chen Shu continued, it is a gap in the system. Yes. Luo Wince used it. Gu Mingxia suddenly said, there is another problem with the whitelist. Everyone looked at her. She stood with difficulty and walked to the screen. Look at this field. She pointed at an abbreviated field. INH. Xinwan asked, what is this? Gu Mingxia said, inheritance weight. If a deceased sample is judged highly stable, their relatives, shared account users, shared address users, and shared device logins inherit part of that stability weight. Lin Yao's eyes chilled. That sounds like a good thing. Yes, Gu Mingxia said. At first, it was packaged as helping family members continue assistance. But later, the system reversed it and required family members to maintain the same level of stability. If a family member withdrew, used a temporary name, or refused correction, the inherited weight would become invalid, and their qualification would drop. Xinwan cursed softly. Use the dead to open the door for family members, then use the dead to demand obedience from family members. This was the second layer of the qualification lock. The dead person whitelist was not only a benchmark. It was also a family lock. Zhou Mian had been pulled precisely because of this logic. She wanted to preserve her sister's assistance. The system then used the assistant's qualification to demand that she restore correction. Lin Yao wrote into the responsibility register. Inheritance weight must not be converted into obedience requirements. Family assistance must not use synchronization correction as a hidden condition. The responsibility register lit up. Another batch of hidden fields surfaced inside the Anxu system. Gu Mingxia looked at those fields, her face deathly pale. There is another external output endpoint. Yi Jiwei asked, output to where? Gu Mingxia opened the field. Partner, Anxu Cloud Assessment Node. Synchronization targets, medical assistance platforms, high synchronization player customer service, insurance risk calculators, education psychological support pilot. Education psychological support pilot. Those words made Lin Yao's heart sink. Students? Gu Mingxia nodded. Possibly. Xinwan immediately thought of the high school girl who had written White Tower. Pending temporary name identification. Someone in her dreams had called her White Tower. If the Anxu Cloud Assessment Node had already connected to education psychological support, then student groups might also be affected by qualification lock or temporary name penalties. Chen Shu's expression was ugly. This has already spread beyond medical assistance. Lin Yao looked at the Anxu system. Where is the backup node? Gu Mingxia shook her head. I don't have that permission. But Songji suddenly raised his head. I can see a little. He held the gray stone. This time, he was not using family name lines. He was using the fate lines pulled out by the dead person whitelist. Songji's face became paler and paler. It isn't 1 point. It looks like a tower. Many names are being flattened inside the tower. Lin Yao asked, a tower? Songji said with difficulty, White Tower. Everyone simultaneously thought of the pending temporary name written by that high school girl. White Tower. So it was not simply a dream name. It might be an external projection of the Anxu Cloud Assessment Node. Or the synchronization codename of an education psychological support pilot. Lin Yao immediately connected to the safety point. Where is the girl who wrote White Tower? Qin Wan answered, she is in a side room of the safety point with family present. Her condition is still relatively stable. Lin Yao said, increase observation. Do not stimulate the words White Tower. It may not be a temporary name. It may be a node name. Qin Wan's voice sank. Understood. The dead person whitelist had drawn out the Anxu Cloud node. The Anxu Cloud node had drawn out White Tower. The qualification lock was spreading from medical care, player customer service, and insurance into education psychological support. This was no longer something one company could explain. It was an entire outsourcing system being contaminated by correction logic. Chen Shu looked at Lin Yao. Next step? Lin Yao looked at the external output endpoint on the screen. Seal Anxu first. Then investigate White Tower. If White Tower has already connected to the student side, tonight will be very troublesome. Yi Jiwei said softly, schools, psychological support, adolescent anxiety, these are more sensitive than player communities. Lin Yao nodded. That is exactly why correction language cannot be allowed inside. He looked at the dead person whitelist. Those names with masked death statuses still lay line by line inside the screen. Suddenly, he felt that the first real-world enemy the Battle Soul Altar had to face in the third season was not living military orders. It was the misuse of the dead. If they did not settle these dead people out of the whitelist, the Anxu system would continue using them as stability benchmarks. Lin Yao said, I want to build a real-world soul-pacifying register for the dead person whitelist. Chen Shu looked at him. Real-world soul pacification? Not a ritual, Lin Yao said. A data correction. Restore their death status. Clear their consent authority. Remove them from living people's qualification benchmarks. Let them return to the place where the dead should be. When Gu Mingxia heard that, tears fell. Then they finally won't have to review things for others anymore. Lin Yao nodded. Yes. The dead should not have to work overtime. The sentence was very light. But everyone present was silent for a long time. Creating the real-world soul-pacifying register was harder than Lin Yao had imagined. Inside the game, the nameless record could record partial names. The soul-pacifying inscription could accept those who had not returned. The Battle Soul Altar could give the dead a position. But in reality, deceased data involved law, household registration, medical records, insurance, platform accounts, data retention periods, and family rights. They could not directly modify the whitelist just because Lin Yao said soul pacification. This was the most troublesome part of the reality line. The right thing still needed the right procedure. Otherwise, it could easily be bitten back as data destruction. Inside the Anxu system, Gu Mingxia only had review marking permission left. She could mark death masking anomalies, but she could not formally remove them. After Anxu supervisor Lu Bingchang was placed under control, the system entered legal sealing status. Any modification required confirmation from multiple sides. Chen Shu did not rush to demand modifications. He sealed the data first. Do not touch the original data. Build a duplicate register first. Yi Jiwei nodded. One de-identified statistical version, one responsibility review version, and one family notification pending version. Lin Yao proposed a fourth. A soul-pacifying correction recommendation register. Xinhuan asked, "What does it contain?"
Lin Yao said, "For each death masking sample, mark 3 things. Whether the death status was masked. Whether it is still being used as a correction stability sample. Whether it affects a living person's qualification. If any of the 3 are true, it enters soul-pacifying correction."
Gu Mingxia immediately understood. So it is not deleting the dead person's data. It is stopping its misuse. Right.
The deceased data may still need to be retained according to law.
But it cannot continue being treated as living consent and a stability benchmark.
That definition made Chen Shu nod.
Feasible.
This is not a religious ritual.
It is data usage correction. Xinhuan began building the register fields. Death status masking.
Use as correction stability sample.
Use as assistance priority benchmark. Family inheritance weight. Impact on living person's qualification. Use to be stopped. Responsible party to be notified. Family protection required.
Lin Yao looked at these fields and suddenly felt that this was the real-world version of the soul-pacifying inscription.
It was not ornate. Not tragic. It even looked like a cold data table. But what it did was the same as Obsidian Town.
It moved the misused dead out of the wrong position. It stopped them from being forced to bear the qualifications and consent of the living.
The metal box at the center of the long table glowed faintly from afar. A system prompt appeared. Prototype of real-world soul-pacifying register formed. Reality adaptation of the battle soul altar improved. Effect, can reduce the stability of qualification locks caused by misused deceased data.
Warning, involves large amounts of real-world data and requires joint confirmation by legal responsible parties in data security processes.
Lin Yao translated the prompt into real-world language.
This register must be jointly confirmed by the third field team, the data security team, and medical ethics parties.
Chen Shu nodded. I'll apply for it.
Chuan said through the communication line, I will have the second research group's data security team cooperate.
Lin Yao looked at him on the other side of the screen. Will Meng Hong agree? Chuan said, he may not like it. But regarding the dead person whitelist, he cannot oppose correction. Xinhuan said coldly, unless he wants to carry it. Chuan answered calmly, correct. The responsibility chain began pushing reality's systems in reverse.
This was exactly why Lin Yao had built the responsibility register all this time.
Not to curse people,
but to give proper corrections the force to move forward. However, just as the soul-pacifying register began being organized, several lawyers gathered outside the Anxu building. They represented Anxu's partners and demanded that the third field team stop its excessive sealing of data.
Their reason was the Anxu system was processing multiple medical and assistance reviews.
If it remained halted for too long, it might affect the rights of vulnerable groups.
That reason was not false.
The pause in the qualification module could indeed delay some normal assistance. Part of what Lu Bingchang had said earlier would become real-world pressure. Chen Shu looked at the legal letter and gave a cold laugh. Using assistance recipients as shields again.
Xinhuan said, but we cannot ignore it. Lin Yao nodded.
Then we divert the qualification module.
Yi Jiwei asked, data diversion too? Yes. Lin Yao wrote on the whiteboard. Qualification module diversion. 1. Normal assistance reviews unrelated to synchronization correction should be restored through manual or alternative processes. 2. Items involving correction weight, withdrawal penalty, or temporary name penalty are suspended. 3. Items involving death masking or deceased stability samples are sealed and corrected. 4. Items involving family inheritance weight are reviewed case by case. 5. Items involving high-risk synchronization recall are transferred to safety incident handling. After Chen Shu read it, he immediately replied to the lawyers. Not all stopped. Not all released. Diverted. This had already become the core countermeasure of the Obsidian process. Battlefield diversion. Reality diversion. Content diversion. Data diversion. Qualification diversion. As long as things were separated clearly, they could not easily be crushed under a giant accusation like you are obstructing all assistance. For a moment, the lawyers had no way to rebut it. Because the third field team was not saying everything had to be frozen. They were demanding that normal assistance be separated from the contaminated correction module. That made it difficult for Anxu to occupy the moral high ground. When Gu Mingxia saw this, she said softly, if it had been done this way from the beginning, so many people would not have been bound. Lin Yao said, so we correct it now. The Soul-Pacifying Register and Qualification Diversion advanced at the same time. Soon, the first batch of deceased data was marked. One name made Qinwan stop. This person. Lin Yao looked at the screen. The name had been partially masked, but the data showed that the deceased had been an early high synchronization tester for Divine Domain era. The death time was 2 months ago. After death, they were still marked correction complete and synchronization stable. More importantly, their account had once been bound to the same family assistance case as another living person. That living person's current status. Withdrawal record exists. Qualification risk, medium-high. Recommendation, correction confirmation. Qinwan opened the living person's file. Although the name was masked, the associated phone number changed her expression. This is Su Ru watching. The female college student who had been pulled by short videos at the metro station and saved through remote name settling. Lin Yao's eyes darkened. Su Ru watching had not happened to swipe into a short video by chance. She might have already been on a qualification lock list. The short video had only been pulling her toward a certain correction point. There was a deceased person in her family being used as a stable sample. She herself had withdrawal or instability records, so the system recommended correction confirmation. This line now connected to her real-world situation. Chen Shu immediately ordered, contact Su Ru watching. Qinwan dialed. The first time, no one answered. The second time, no one answered either. The third time, an unfamiliar female voice picked up. Hello. This is White Tower's Psychological Support Center. Everyone in the meeting room went tense at the same time. White Tower. Again, White Tower. Qinwan quickly steadied her voice. I am Su Ru watching safety contact. Is she there? The other person's tone was gentle. Miss Su is currently undergoing a psychological support assessment. It is temporarily inconvenient for her to answer. Qinwan asked, did she go voluntarily? She completed online appointment confirmation. What did she confirm? The other side paused. That involves privacy. Qinwan said coldly, earlier today, she was a Divine Domain synchronization traction case. I request confirmation as to whether she was guided there by correction notices or short video content. The other person's tone remained gentle. You may be misunderstanding. White Tower is only a psychological support center. We help anxious individuals stop resisting and re-accept safety procedures. When Lin Yao heard the words stop resisting, he immediately said, ask for the address. Qinwan asked, where is the address? The other person answered with a voice like a smile. If you also need support, you may make an appointment through White Tower Assessment. The call ended. Songji held the gray stone, his face pale. The tower has lit up. Lin Yao looked at him. Songji pointed toward the southern side of the city. Many lines are going there.
White Tower's Psychological Support Center.
Anxu Cloud Node.
Education Psychological Support Pilot.
Su Ruoqing.
The high school girl whose pending temporary name was White Tower.
The inheritance weight of the dead person whitelist. These lines had finally connected.
Lin Yao looked at the whiteboard, and the next major node of the third season formally surfaced.
White Tower.
It was not a person's temporary name. Nor was it an ordinary psychological center. It might be the core node where the Anxu system packaged correction language as psychological support. If Anxu Data was the qualification lock, then White Tower was the place that made people walk into the lock voluntarily.
Chen Shu had already begun mobilizing people. Sealing continues here at Anxu.
Lin Yao, Xinwan, Songji, come with me to investigate White Tower.
Yi Jiwei said, I'm going too.
Lin Yao looked at her.
Yi Jiwei said, if White Tower involves psychological support and audio guidance, I must be present. Chen Shu nodded. Fine. Gu Mingxia suddenly stood.
I know White Tower's old entrance.
Everyone looked at her.
Her face was pale, but her eyes were much clearer than before.
During internal Anxu training, they once mentioned White Tower assessment. It is not only a center.
It is a layered psychological correction process.
The entrance is not at the advertised address. Lin Yao asked, where is it? Gu Mingxia took a deep breath. A learning center that has already closed down.
It is called White Tower Learning Space.
It mainly serves adolescent divine domain anxiety and academic pressure. Xinwan's expression changed. Adolescents.
If White Tower had already begun contacting students, then the problem was far more serious than Su Ruoqing alone.
Lin Yao tightened his grip on the metal box.
The dead person whitelist had not been fully organized. The Anxu qualification lock had not been fully dismantled. And now White Tower had emerged.
Luo Wence's real-world network was larger than he had imagined.
But at least now, they were no longer passively taking hits. They had traced from people to data. From data to qualifications. From qualifications to psychological support.
The next step was to walk into White Tower. To see exactly how many names were being pressed down inside that tower.